Welcome to Unit 5, Lesson 4, Representing Functions at Rational Inputs Practice Problems. Okay, the bacteria population is tripling every hour, tripling. So that gives us times 3 every 1 hour. So X equals 1 full hour. By what factor does the population change in 1/2 hour? So the factor, when we say factor, we only are worried about the b part. And an exponential, a times b to the x power. The factor is the b and the x. This is the factor. So b is 3, x is 1, but we want 1/2 hour, so we had to divide this by 2. So if x is 1/2 hour, that's d. If we transform this into a radical, like we did at the beginning of Unit 3, we know that this is the square root of 3 because the 2 here, the denominator goes as the index, and the exponent is the numerator. So that represents A. A material has a half-life of 4 hours. A sample material is measured. Write the expression to represent the amount of material. So let's write our original equation. So y equals A, which is 225, or B, half-life, so, and where X equals 4 hours. Now, 1 p.m. on the same day, so noon to 1 is 1 hour. So to get 1 hour from 4 hours, that's going to be 225, 1/2 to the X over 4. And that will give us 1 hour, where X equals 1 hour. Now, 7 p.m. is 7 hours later. So once you put this equation, I should have put it in another color, this equation, the altered equation, into the calculator. How do you calculate? You just go down to 1. Now to give you 1 hour. 4 hours would be 1 jump. 7 p.m. is 7 hours from noon. So we're looking for X equals 7. And whatever the number is at X equals 7, you can calculate it. We don't need to calculate it. Okay, so this expression, 225, 1/2 to the 5/2 power, is the material at some time. Now, they're dealing with the original equation. They're not asking us for a time frame. They're asking us for an input. So what we're going to do is take our 5/2 and multiply it by 4, and that is going to give us 20 over 2, which is 10, because we had to go back to the original equation. They didn't give us the time frame. So 5/2 half-life, 5/2 half-life is 5/2 times divided by 2, 5/2 times 4, which is 10 p.m. 10 hours from noon is 10 p.m. Okay, the number of employees in a company has been growing exponentially by 10% each year. By what factor? So the factor, we're only looking for B and the exponent. We're not worried about A. We just want B and the exponent. So if our growth is 10%, 100% represents the original amount of employees. So we've got to do 100 plus 10, giving us 110%. We're going to divide this number by 100 because percent literally means divide by 100. We get 1.1 as our growth every year. So this is growth over a year. So now to answer A, so let's do these in color so we're clear. A is going to be orange, B in purple. Okay, so now looking at each month, A. Since 1 stands for 1 year, how many months in a year? 12. So if we take our factor and divide it by 1/12, that will give us the factor over 1 month. Now for every 3 months, 3 months, we had to divide a year by 4 to get to 3 months. Because 12 divided by 4 equals 3. So for B, we had to do 1.1 1/4. Because 12 divided by 3 is 4 months. 12 divided by 4 is 3 months. And then for C, every 20 months. That's a little bit weird. So 1.1 to the 20 over 12. But we're not going to leave fractions 20 months out of 12 months. Or you could leave it like that, or you could reduce your fraction. Since they both have a factor of 4, let's say 5 over 3. 20 divided by 4 is 5. 12 divided by 4 is 3. This is the one you will see on the standardized test if you're asked the question. Okay, the value of a truck decreases exponentially since its purchase. So we're talking about decrease. Here's our initial value because we're at 0. And here's over 1 year. This point is decade. This is 1 decade. So writing our thing, here's our A. What's our B? We have to do 24,000 divided by 40,000, which equals 0.6. So this is our B. We multiply by 0.6 to get to 24. So writing our equation, y equals our original amount, 40,000, to 0.6, to D, where D stands for decade. Now, what I recommend you put in the calculator, let's see, how many jumps from 0 to 1? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I suggest you do 40 to the 0.6 to the D over, you would put X into the calculator. So let me write X. Let's change this to X. Let's change this to X. And let's change this from D to X, where X equals 1 decade. And X over 10 equals 1 year, because there's 10 years to a decade, or 1/10 of a decade is 1 year. So the bottom equation, which I should have put in a different color, should go into the calculator. Now, it says, write an expression, write the function of time, D, in decades. So our function f of D, where D stands for decade, is 40 times 0.6 to the X, where X stands for 1 decade. And I'm using 40 instead of 40,000. When you translate the number in, just put it to 1,000. Write an expression to represent the car's value after 4 years after purchase. So F of 4 years is 4 out of 10. 4 years out of 10 is 40 to the 0.6 to the X, not to the X, because X is 4. 4 out of 10. Now, if we were to use the other equation I came up with, all right, C, here's the other equation. Y for 1 year, y of X, where X stands for 1 year, is 40 to the 0.6 to the X over 10. By what factor? 0.6 to the 1/10 gives us 0.95. So the car's every year is worth 95% of its value, or it's losing 5%. Okay, the value of the stock raises by 8% each year. Explain why the stock value does not increase 80% each decade. Because this is an exponential equation, not a linear equation. And in linear equations, you multiply from time frame to time frame, from interval to interval, and they grow up differently. So let us take our original amount, whatever the stock price was worth, 100%. Let's add the increase, giving us 108% each year. So after dividing by 100, we get 1.08, and X stands for 1 year. So now, if we do a 10-year period, 1.08 to a 10-year period, what do we get? We get 2.15 and a bunch of numbers. We're going to round it to 2.16. We're going to subtract 1, giving us 1.16. We're going to times it by 100, and that's 116% increase. So the value increases by more than 80% each decade. Okay, decide if each statement is true or false. 50 to the 1/2 power does not mean 50 divided by 2. So this is false. Oh, sorry, I was not on the pen. So this is false. The square root of 30 is a solution to y squared. This is true. 240 is equivalent. That's true. The root of 20 is a solution. This is false. M to the 4th. We have to take the 4th root of 20, not the square root. This is the square root. Mathematicians are lazy. They don't like writing ones for coefficients and exponents, and they don't like writing 2s on a radical. So M is equal to the 4th root of 20, not the square root of 20. They're two different numbers. Okay, let's look at this problem. We did not do this in class, but I'm going to show you how to do it anyway. All we have to do is use a simple formula. Each year, Lynn adds $300. So every year he's putting in $300 on an account that pays 4.5%. So now, 300 represents 100%. We're adding 4.5%, giving us 104.5%, which equals 1.045, which is a B. That's your rate. Now we have 20 years. We've never seen this equation before, but this is a geometric sequence formula. Well, let me write the general formula first. Is A times 1 minus your rate, your B, let's put B here, to the time over 1 minus B. Okay, so sticking our numbers in, we get 300 times 1 minus 1.045 to the 20 divided by 1 minus 1.045. Calculating that out should give us 9411.62, not 62, I'm sorry, 426. These numbers just keep going on. So when we're dealing with money, we have to round to the hundredth, to the penny. So the number to the right is a 6. So that means the number in the penny spot rounds to 9411.43. And so the proper answer is C. So now, if you're having any trouble putting this into the calculator, what you do is you hit 300, you hit the alpha button, which is the green button, and then xt theta n, which is right next to it, and that will bring up a fraction. Then we're going to hit parenthesis, and you know how to put the rest in, caret 20. Once you hit caret 20, arrow down, put the denominator in, and now you're going to have to hit the right arrow twice so that you can put in the right parenthesis. Once you do this, you'll be able to calculate it and get that number.